Welcome to Reels on the Rocks, the show where your hosts Whiskey and Sweet Tea discuss film from the unpretentious perspective. We're taking you back to school this month, and our second class is on the edge of 17. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and as always, please be advised that spoilers are ahead. Hello, listeners, and in case any of y'all are wondering, we've been just hanging out in the stockroom at Petland. Isn't that right, Whiskey?
Ew.
I was trying to come up with something clever, and I couldn't think of anything.
No, that's a funny one. Yeah, no, we didn't send any inappropriate messages to the to the popular boy at school. Welcome back, everybody, back to school, for this very cringy episode of Whiskey and Sweet Tea.
Oh my
God.
bit
like cringy with the like. If you've seen the movie we're talking about, you know what I mean.
Cringy with heart. Cringy with heart.
Yeah, not cringy in the sense that the movie is bad, but in the sense that all of the situations will make you cringe.
Oh god, yeah, there's just scenes in this movie that you're just like, it's like watching, to quote a show I like, it's like watching like a walrus swim into a propeller.
What show is that from?
Mike and Molly. Duh.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That's coming back, right? Or is it already back?
Well, it ended almost a decade ago. No, not almost a decade ago. While we were in school, I think we were juniors. I was junior at the time, but
okay.
It makes me feel good to that you thought it was still on. That means it's going strong.
No. I thought you said they were bringing it back though.
Oh, if I did, I was mistaken. I wish they would bring it back. I miss it.
I swear, I could have sworn you sent me a thing. It's like, oh my god, they're bringing it back.
I would have been excited. I would have been so excited. But, so today's thing, let's see. So do you want to hop into our micro topic first, or do you want to talk about our drinks first? We got like two micro topics. Yes.
Like a gaggle of micro topics. The first thing I just want to bring up, like this has been kind of the end of our summer spew of episodes, and I just wanted to mention how it's funny that when we kicked off this summer, there was a lot of reporting talking about how, oh, is Hollywood in trouble? Everything's bombing. Everything's doing horribly at the box office. What's gonna happen? And it's so funny in retrospect because so much has happened over the past 3 months. Like in the movies they were talking about, like Indiana Jones was one. Elemental is another one, which is interesting because that has persisted over the summer and is now actually making a profit. And internationally, it did super well in like Korea and stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like there was another one that did not do well. But it's just so funny because we had like Across the Spider-Verse, we had Barbenheimer. Just this weekend, we've got the Blue Beetle overtaking Barbie for the first time in like 2 months, maybe a month. But either way, like it's just funny how the film media was being such doomers when everything's fine. People are going to movies. The movies that were bombing were just bombing because people didn't have an interest in seeing them.
Right.
And I know
amazing. I have been saying that for years. People are like, oh my god, why is this not doing well? It's critically acclaimed. I'm like, it doesn't matter. If nobody wants to see it, nobody will see it. That's
the thing. Like one of our past episodes you brought up, like I know your mom's a big fan of the new Indiana Jones. I'm sure it's fine. I think critics gave it like a pass. Like, it did fine critically. But it's the same reason I didn't go out to see it. Like I was kind of over Indiana Jones after the last one. Like, and there were other reasons, like Spielberg wasn't directing it, and it's one of those things. Like Hollywood is so not unoriginal, and I mean Indiana Jones is kind of, I don't think, nearly as popular as it used to be. So
right. Well,
whether it's good or not,
a lot of people like you were just soured by the last one, and actually, if I remember correctly, this one kind of pretends the last one didn't happen.
Sort of. He does. Well, actually, I mean, like, I haven't seen it, but I know that there's a line about his son dying in Vietnam and stuff. But like, unlike a lot of people, I didn't hate the last one. I just thought it was the worst out of the four. Like, I remember at the time everyone was just like, aliens and Indiana Jones. And I was like, I mean, whatever. It's kind of the same as all the supernatural stuff happening at the end of the movies. They just went with like a sci-fi thing. My issue was more complicated than that, and I didn't hate the movie. Again, I just thought it was the worst out of the four. But it definitely made me kind of tired of it. And part of the problem is, like, Indiana Jones, he's sort of like a male power fantasy, so the older he gets, the less it works. And one thing I am aware of with this new one is that that's part of the story, is that he's sort of too old to be doing this. So at least that's probably a positive. Like, with the Crystal Skull, it kind of had this attitude of, he's still got it, and it's like, no, he doesn't. There's something embarrassing about this 70-year-old man trying to relive his glory days. No offense to Harrison Ford. But that's kind of like the problem with that series. What I thought would be a neat idea back, I think I even said this last time we talked about the movie, but, when Disney bought it, I was like, they should reboot it, essentially, do like cast someone to be a young Indiana Jones and
but
go with that.
Please don't make it Chris Pratt.
That's who, like, again, in 2016, when the news broke that Disney was making an Indiana Jones, that's who I thought they should cast. I don't know what I would think now, but I'm very sick of Chris Pratt. But yeah, that's just one of our mini topics. I just thought it would be funny to kind of highlight how wrong everybody reporting that was months ago, because summer's over. There have been plenty of hits. There have been records broken.
Right, yeah.
And going into the fall, things are still going quite well at the box office. So any big blockbuster bombs, it's not because people don't care about movies. It's because for one reason or another, people just don't want to see those movies.
Right. Well, and they're even experimenting with and not experimenting, but as we've talked about previously, maybe privately, maybe on the podcast, we've talked about how they're already starting to take the wrong lessons from the box office.
Yes.
One of them, people are saying, the Mattel cinematic universe. Mattel wanted to do a cinematic universe even before Barbie made it big. They were just hoping they didn't know it was going to do as good as it did, but I think they were hoping it would do okay. Personally, I'm not very sure how that's going to go, especially with Polly Pocket having Lena Dunham directing.
Lena Dunham is, so, like, all the right-wingers who were expecting Barbie to just be this awful, like, play by the numbers, like, feminist speak piece where it's just, talking down to the audience. That's what Lena Dunham would have made.
Yeah.
Like, I really, man, it's so weird, because I liked that show Girls, and then as we got to know Lena more and more, it just became apparent that her character from Girls was her.
Right. Like
it made you wonder, like, does she realize that? Yeah, well, and it's also like, does she realize that her character's behavior is weird and crazy? Like, if she acts like that in real life.
Well, and there's that, and then she speaking of with it's really interesting with all of her talking points and stuff, and then she essentially, allegedly, assaults Brad Pitt on the red carpet. Like,
there's so many things. Like, this could be a podcast.
This could be a whole thing.
Past behavior. The other thing with Polly Pocket, I got nothing against the toy, but I have a hard time thinking of how they could make that as impactful as Barbie, because the thing about Barbie as a toy and making it like a feminist movie is the point they make in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Right.
Which we'll try not to talk too much about the movie because we don't want to spoil, and also we will talk about it more in our finale for the year. But, like, the first 10 minutes of Barbie, they're talking about how toys for little girls were like baby dolls.
Yeah, essentially the only thing you could aspire to was to be a mother.
And that's what made Barbie popular, is you could be anything you wanted. You could get and it's funny, in the 50s it's like Barbie the secretary, or Barbie the, I don't know, but
she
like now it's like,
was a rocket scientist in 1959. Do you know what the percentage of female rocket scientists were at the time? Less than 1.
And that's cool, because I didn't know that. I assumed it was probably like kind of girl jobs at the time, because I wasn't around in the 1950s. When Barbie was around when I was a kid, she was already a mermaid and a scientist and all that, a doctor, veterinary, all that stuff. But that's like what makes Barbie so rich. Like, despite being a toy, that was the angle that made it like a good movie.
Yeah.
I don't know what you could do with Polly Pocket to make it deeper interesting.
The only thing that I can think of is with it being small and being able to fit
that was the
inside
thing.
things.
That was like the selling point with the toy, was that it was like portable, like you could bring it to
Right.
school and stuff. But I don't see how you could make that concept into like a story.
Maybe a
And especially when
on...
Lena Dunham is in charge, I really don't know what's gonna happen with that.
Well, the only thing I can think of is environmentalism or consumerism. Some commentary on that. Kind of
Maybe, but
kind of like what they tried to do with, and I forget what that movie is called, but basically they shrink people down. I don't know. It was odd.
well, and it's the same thing. Like Hot Wheels is another one that's on their list, and I don't know what you could do with that wouldn't just be like Fast and the Furious for kids. You know what I mean? Like we'll see, obviously, but it's they seem to not understand why Barbie was good. They just seem to be like, oh, people want toy movies, so let's churn out 20. And then when they all like, I predict it's going to turn out to be like Universal's Dark franchise that they do, the Marvel universe that they tried to do with their monsters that bombed after The Mummy. Like, that's what I think is going to happen with the Mattel Cinematic Universe, is the next one they make is going to suck, and then that is just going to...
Well, it's just like, I understand Barbie and Hot Wheels, because those are two very historic, storied brands that are pretty iconic. I don't see that with Polly Pockets. I don't know why they're going ahead with Polly Pocket now. I guess she's iconic for a generation, but... she doesn't have like the depth and the history and everything else.
Well, and again, it's like the whole selling point with Polly Pocket as a toy is that she's portable. Like you can fit her whole playset in your backpack. Like, for a toy, that's pretty cool. But I don't see how you can make like a really interesting story out of that.
Yeah,
and you can't even really do like a whole feminist thing with that, because Barbie really, and I don't even really know how you could spin that with Polly Pocket. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe Lena Dunham will surprise us all, but considering her track record, I have a feeling this is going to kill the Mattel Cinematic Universe.
Listen, as somebody who this past weekend picked up the Barbie Dreamhouse Her Universe backpack, something tells me I won't be doing that for Polly Pocket.
Yeah.
But...
they do need to make that Mojo Dojo playset.
I know they really... I mean, they've come out with Mojo Dojo Ken.
Exactly. They need to go full into it.
Which I didn't realize until you brought it up, it was inspired by the guy from Fight Club, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone who, again, we'll get into this more for the finale, but anyone who has seen the Barbie movie, I wonder if you recognized that Ken's fur or mink coat kind of reminded me of what Tyler Durden was wearing in Fight Club.
Oh, Matt, well, not to spoil anything later, but you probably have already figured this out, but probably one of my favorite roasts. I love that they roasted something so hard in that movie, and I was very much there for it, and you probably already know what it is.
Oh, yes. But so you had a more in-depth mini topics, and I actually hadn't heard of this controversy, so fill me in, T.
Okay, so first off, this first mini topic kind of ended up getting broken into two mini topics because, me being me, I did not understand that what I thought was a controversy really wasn't a controversy, but I do think it still needs to be talked about. But looking further into the movie, there is, sort of a brewing controversy with it as it relates to the story. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that they've gotten exemptions for the movie. Priscilla has gotten exemptions to have their red carpet and stars and everything attend the premiere in Venice. Now, what's interesting about this is the current agreements bar actors and writers from promoting projects that are tied to the organization that were filmed in the U.S. Now, according to, I believe it was Variety, the key word here is in the U.S. So Priscilla was filmed entirely in Canada. So because of that, they're able to get an exemption. Now, to me, I kind of have very much mixed feelings about that because, Sophia, it's directed by Sofia Coppola, very storied director, very well respected director. And it kind of rubs me the wrong way that she reached out, or her production reached out on behalf of the movie to get an exemption. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's almost like with somebody with your status and your prestige, should she be trying to more stand with the line? I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
We talked about how the Directors Guild were being kind of lame.
Yeah.
And here we go. Here is a someone who could be, more supportive. There, because I was going to. Well, so who? Because I only recently started seeing trailers for this movie. Who's it by? Like, who made it? Obviously Sofia Coppola is the director, but which studio made it? Is it like an indie movie? Because Sofia Coppola sometimes does kind of smaller scale things.
So it says the production companies behind it are American Zoetrope and The Apartment Pictures, and it is being distributed by A24.
Here we go. This ties in perfectly with what I was talking about before we started recording. Because when you mentioned this before explaining it, it's like, oh, this reminds me. Any of you guys out there, and this has been talked about before we recorded this, but there's been a lot of well-meaning but very, very ill-informed people yelling at people over the internet about being scabs.
Yeah.
And I'm going to preface this with with the types of people who are anti-union, usually right-leaning people, the argument is always it's going to kill small business. If you raise the minimum wage, if you do whatever, it's going to hurt small businesses because, hey, if I want to open up a small business, I can't afford to pay people this wage. I can't afford, and there is some truth to that. But the thing about these people is that they don't realize the unions aren't targeting small businesses. And this is kind of the perfect example with that is that's an A24 film. Like I was telling you outside of the podcast, there was two other movies by A24 that got the go ahead by the Actors Guild to have Paul Rudd, and I forget who his co-star is, but the movie sounds neat. It's about a father and daughter who hit a unicorn on a road trip.
What?
But the thing is, A24 is not Universal Studios. It's not Disney. It's not, yes, they are a big company, but they're essentially kind of the quote-unquote small business. These unions are not targeting small indie studios. They're targeting massive multi-billion-dollar corporations that can definitely afford to pay a living wage to these people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing where you guys who are yelling at these people and calling them scabs, you mean well, but you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's there's been people grips or gaffers, blue collar workers on sets, cancel these people, they're scabs. It's they're not part of the actor or the writers guild. They're just doing their job. It's this has been covered by other people on the internet and stuff. It's dumb, and also this is literally why that argument doesn't work about it'll hurt small businesses. If you want to do your student film, now you have to pay all of your actors $1,000 just for no. They're targeting Disney. They're targeting these big companies that can definitely afford to pay a living wage to the people who are making them billions of dollars. A24, they're smaller scale. They do bring in a profit, but they don't bring in Disney money. A24 makes indie movies for weirdos like me that father-daughter hitting a unicorn on a road trip, or an adaptation of an Arthurian legend, or recently weird stuff like Beau is Afraid, which technically, unless I'm mistaken, that actually brought in a loss. So
Well,
Yeah, that's with that. It sounds like no one major was involved with the film outside of A24, and again, their profits are nowhere near any of the studios that are being picketed as we speak.
right. So I guess my issue isn't necessarily with A24 because A24 only picked up distribution after the film was made. I think that so in that case, I guess it's okay. It just I don't know. It's kind of like one of the things. It just doesn't look good, but it's not technically
I know it's
wrong.
I know what you mean, because the thing is, we said this a few episodes ago. I don't know what deal the Directors Guild got, but I think that they would send a better message if they were, striking in solidarity. Because I doubt their job will be any safer. As I said, we don't know what kind of deal they made with the studios, but this ropes in all of them.
Yeah.
Directors we like or don't like, because they're all in the guild, and that includes Sofia Coppola. But yeah, like this just kind of reminds me of the stuff that's been going on the last few months with people like trying to like cancel scabs on the. Again, it's like this Sofia Coppola movie is not, The Lion King or something.
Right.
It's just not going to bring in the same kind of money. And A24, for all I know, I'm assuming pay people fairly. I don't think anyone's really ever complained about working with them.
I haven't had any controversy with them, but I think what people's issue with because I kind of gave you my feelings. I just think it looks weird. Again, I know it's not going to pull in the big money. It's just Sofia Coppola is just like she's a very celebrated and storied director. Coming from the Coppola line. I'm just like, girl, could you just like maybe not have a premiere this one time? But
I'm more for it. I'm more for it because like this is not just the only production that's still going to be going forward. There's like other things that are going to be okayed. Basically, like these smaller things are going to be going to the guilds and being like, is it okay if we continue production on this? And they're going to okay stuff. And there's like some TV shows that have been thumbs up by the the guild heads or whatever. So like what I kind of am hoping by this is that productions will keep going and these smaller movies will make money while the big studios, while relying on things like AI to write their scripts, will just be releasing dog crap and no one will want to see it.
Yeah.
Because that'll show, hey, if you actually put some effort into your films. Like A24 has had like a meteoric rise in the last decade, and I don't think it has anything to do with film snobs or like movie hipsters. I think really what it is that they're one of the only, there's a bunch of like these indie studios. Neon is one. I love how that's the only one I can think of at the top of my head, but like there's a bunch of these. A24 is probably the most known one because they have the most hits. But like they're the only things making original movies anymore. You go to any of the top studios and it's just sequels and remakes, superhero movies. Like even like Barbie was a good movie, but it's another example of it's like, well, what can we throw out that's like a recognizable property? I feel like A24 is successful because they're doing what movies used to be. Someone with an original, interesting idea making a movie. A lot of them are like artsy and whatever. But I think the reason they're successful is it's like the only thing these days that feels new.
Well, to play the cynic here, would A24 be as successful if they were doing original movies that weren't artsy?
Well, some of them aren't artsy. Like, again, you kind of have this idea of A24 being like completely snobby, but
well, I mean,
like eighth grade was a little artsy, but you liked that one.
I did like that one, but it's also the only studio I know that sells like $200 leather-bound copies of the scripts of their movies. So that may have
it's
changed
definitely
recently.
It definitely appeals to like film nerds, but the thing about them doing well is that the broader audience is going to see their movies too. Like one of my favorite A24 movies, like Eighth Grade is a perfect example. That one did super well.
And was
like
the
Hereditary
Lighthouse them too?
Yeah.
Okay, I did like The Lighthouse. I told you I saw that. I had no idea.
There was another
but I loved
A24
it.
film. Well, and also like I know you didn't like Lady Bird, but they also are a great reason that Greta Gerwig got the
Yeah.
career that she has.
Oh yeah.
And I know you didn't like Hereditary, but that's another one where like just people went to see it. You know, it wasn't just like movie nerds or like, you know, snobby horror people or whatever. Like people went to see it, and
Listen,
from
I
word of
tried to
mouth-
trick my grandmother into going to go see Midsummer. It didn't work, but
Oh,
I
that's
tried
mean.
to. I tried
That is-
so hard. No, but
Oh, you know what? You know what else?
Clear, my gripe
You-
though here is not with A24. Like I understand their thing, but the thing about A24 though that separates them, I guess, from the other indie studios. And I'm just trying to give perspective to like what everybody else is and why they're having issues with some of these exemptions. Is A24 at least has the power to be a distributor? As we saw, they're the ones that are distributing
Exactly.
Priscilla, so they have that power, so they're cool. The problem with a lot of these smaller indie ones is they're basically going out, making the movies, doing the work, doing everything, and then the film is being purchased by like Universal, Fox,
Exactly.
all these other studios. That's why people I think are calling them scrubs, because like A24 is fine, regardless of whether or not I like their movies, because you know they're at least they're like I said, they're not huge, but they're big enough to be their own distributor. They're not going to sell their films to somebody else. A lot of these smaller productions, smaller TV shows are going to basically put in all the footwork, and then somebody like Netflix or Universal or Disney or somebody's going to come and buy it up, and then once again they're making money, but they didn't have to spend any. So it's kind of like it almost like reinforces, oh, we don't need these people, and I think that's kind of why people online have an issue with them. Making all
For
these
sure.
exceptions.
I think a lot of the people who have issues online genuinely don't know how the system works.
Right.
Because they're just calling anyone who's working currently now a scab, and it's like that's not, you know, not everyone working is a member of the guild or the specific guild striking. It's well intentioned, but it's ill informed.
Yes,
And
do see a lot of those.
I could be wrong. I just recently watched the trailer because I was showing it to someone like a week ago. But another one, I might be wrong, but I think this was A24, was Promising Young Woman. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that was A24 as well.
I actually literally just looked at that DVD the other day. I mean, actually this morning, not the other day.
It's possible I'm mistaking it for another one of those small indie, you know, studios or whatever. But like, I'm pretty sure. I think that one was also A24.
No, it was. You're thinking of Focus Features.
Okay. It's another one though. It's another one of those ones that does not apply to the sorts of stuff that they're striking about.
Yeah.
But yeah. I feel like you just are more annoyed with A24 because you see them everywhere. Like they've been so successful that like every small movie is an A24 movie nowadays.
It's just like it's kind of more like, oh, there they are again, instead of like, ooh, what an unexpected surprise.
I definitely think you should check out Problemista though. I sent you that trailer.
Yes.
And the new Yorgos Lanthimos movie. Both of those look really good, and those are both A24, and they're coming out in like.
And I sent you a trailer for Red, White, and Royal Blue, and you wanted to die.
Yeah, wasn't that a show or was that a movie?
That was a movie.
Yeah,
it was actually.
You know what's funny
it
is
was like #1 movie for like 2 weeks, I think.
You know what's funny is after you sent me that, I was getting so many freaking ads for it. Like I'd never seen it until you sent it to me, and then it was like the only ad that just kept coming up whenever I was like on a video or something. So,
You're welcome.
Yeah.
But the
Well,
other
like I
thing,
said.
the other thing I want to talk about with Priscilla, though, is it's interesting. There's a little bit of a tea spill here because the Elvis Presley estate, because this is about Priscilla Presley, Elvis's wife. The Elvis Presley estate refused the use of his music in the movie, and then referred to it as, I believe, quote, a college film, end quote.
That's mean, man. I'm not even a huge Sofia Coppola fan, and I'm outraged by that. She's, you know, she's talented. She's not one of my favorite directors, but that is uncalled for.
They called it that, and they also people are thinking it's because, again, no one's seen the movie yet, but there's the more, and I actually didn't know, so I started looking into kind of like what this controversy is with the Elvis Presley estate and everybody saying all this stuff. Well, it's mostly the Elvis Presley estate, but essentially, I guess Elvis started courting her when she was 14.
Mm-hmm.
And
not
again,
surprising.
I didn't know that. And they got married. She was super young and everything. So it looks like the movie's gonna like look more into that. And, you know, of course, with Elvis being the Elvis Presley estate's cash cow, they don't want any of that out there. Because, you know, they were all about the Elvis movie when that came out. They were super into that. But
yeah, for sure. And I was even gonna I was like, well, I know they used his music for that movie.
Yeah, they used his music for that movie. But it was interesting. They also, I guess, I was reading an interview with Priscilla Presley and Sofia Coppola, and I could be wrong, and I wish I had remembered. I think it was in the Hollywood Reporter. I could be wrong, but they mentioned that the Elvis Presley estate refused the music and said that they don't, for projects that don't originate there. And I'm like, I know I have seen Elvis Presley music in movies that the Elvis Presley estate didn't come up with. So I don't know why they even said that. But yeah, so that's interesting and super shady of the estate to come out swinging like that.
Yeah, it's not a good look. And like I said, I'm not a super cheerleader for Sofia Coppola. I think I like Lost in Translation. Lost in Translation. And I did enjoy, oh goodness,
The Virgin Suicides?
No,
Marie Antoinette?
Thank you, Marie Antoinette. I was forgetting historical figures. Marie Antoinette, I'm kind of curious, the interesting thing about that movie is she used, like, current music for the soundtrack of that movie, stuff like The Strokes and stuff, so I'm kind of curious what kind of creative
it wasn't just that. She was using modern stuff in the art direction. There was a scene where they had like pastel Chuck Taylor Converse All-Stars, like in her like dressing area or something like that. It was different, to say the least.
I take it you weren't a fan of her Marie Antoinette.
I have never made it all the way through it. It's one of those movies, though, I wanted to really like, and I think maybe I should give it another chance or something, because it's been like about 6 or 7 years since I tried watching it.
I will say, it's the same for me. I've only seen it like at school. Like, for some reason, like a history class I was in, like put it on, like I think it was like finals and like everyone had finished their test or something. And then I did watch it in a film class, but I think we were like watching specific scenes. So I've seen it, but I haven't seen it like all the way through. But I didn't hate it. I thought it was pretty good. It was a neat take on the character. And it did make an excellent point. Like, historically, she's someone that just kind of got thrown under the bus. She didn't really do anything wrong. But because of, you know, the person she was married to, she became kind of like a side supervillain. Like, even though she had no bearing on any of the policies being rolled out by the royals, you know, by her husband, like, you know, the whole let them eat cake thing was like a myth. So that was kind of the interesting angle of the movie, is just how she was very innocent in everything, like realistically.
Listen, I have a friend who works in corporate at one of the studios right now, and I was like, oh my god, you should go to like one of the balconies and throw money down. And he says, yeah, no, we're not having a let them eat cake moment up in here.
And then you were like, actually, she never said that.
Yes. And I was like, actually.
As you put your fedora on, actually.
Oh, God, no. You've ruined fedoras. The internet has ruined fedoras for everybody. But with that being said.
On to the film.
Film.
And we didn't forget, what are you drinking today, T?
Okay, so this is super interesting. I was searching for, what is it called? Things like cocktails and everything to drink.
Yeah.
And I came across, I guess, another either podcast or blog called Alka Hollywood. And they talked about back in 2016, The Edge of 17 also. And they came up with a cocktail called the Petland Stockroom. So it's gin, Saint Germain, lemon, LaCroix sparkling water. They said 2 to 3 drops of Grand Poppy tincture. I don't know what that is, so I left that out. And a twist of lemon. And they said they came up with this because it's exactly the kind of thing an angsty teen with access to their parents' liquor cabinet would come up with. So
that means it might be
having.
disgusting.
It's actually I saw it at Saint Germain, and I like Saint Germain, so I was like, okay, I'm on board with this.
I
just love drinking.
I just love how they came up with such a specific reference to such a specific movie for a cocktail.
Right?
So I was almost going to do something like we talked about in the last episode, because you were drinking Kool-Aid, I think, last episode, and I was like, oh yeah, like a teenager would just like mix vodka and Kool-Aid or something. So I was thinking about that. But so I was grocery shopping at Costco, and just to see if anything would apply to the movie, I was checking out the wine aisle. And there happened to be a wine bottle with a dragon on it, and not anything specifically referenced in the movie, but being in touch with my inner child, my inner teenager. I don't know if I've brought this up on the show in past episodes. It's been a few years, but dragons are another one of those things I'm a sucker for. So this is a Rabble Wines red mix. They're a winery out of Paso Robles. So red wine for me, but the bottle has a dragon on it. I don't know if it's specifically at Costco, but if you are a Costco member and you see the bottle with the dragon on it, well, I haven't tried it yet, but I'm sure it'll be delicious.
Watch it be disgusting.
Oh my god, it tastes just like dragons.
How would you know that?
Did you know dragons are the one animal we eat that doesn't eat us?
What?
Anyone who watches It's Always Sunny will get that one. Anyway, so what is the movie we're talking about?
So first off, my cocktail is super delicious. Thank you again, Alcohol Hollywood, for doing the work for me. But the movie that we are discussing today is The Edge of 17 from 2016. It's one of my personal favorites, and I think one of the few coming-of-age movies I actually related to. It was so interesting with growing up and everybody, and your parents would always try to expose you to like John Hughes movies, and then like everybody would be really into them when you were a teen. And I remember watching them being like, all these people suck. Why would I want to be around any of these people? So I like never got the coming of. I don't know what that is. Like I didn't like. I
You're not wrong. Like that was kind of
Ferris Bueller's an ass. Like I don't know why people love him so much.
Well, that's the thing. Like everyone, it's one of those things because I loved that movie, and growing up, I realized he was an ass. Like that. The thing about that movie is that it's Cameron is the main character. And he's the one I like. I just feel bad for him getting roped into his friend's BS. But I know what you mean, because like Breakfast Club is another one where they're all kind of dislikable in their own ways. But I don't know, watching them. But yeah, we talked about this on one of our worst episodes, the Planes, Trains, and Automobile episode.
Yes!
But that was kind of a thing about John Hughes, was he was an only child and a rich kid. So if you want to talk about being out of touch, there you go. Like he was very good at getting, like his movies were good because they were kind of about not being understood. And that resonates with a lot of people, even if the characters might not be relatable. Well, also, he just really liked the soundtracks.
I love how he was good at getting the point across about not being understood by not understanding.
I'm surprised you aren't leading this episode off with all of the accolades and how much it cost and all that good stuff.
Oh, I was getting into it. But I just wanted to
say
one of the things I love about this is the fact that this was one I could get into, I could relate to, and it kind of sort of from what I've read from the reviews, I think it's one of the reasons why I like it. It kind of turns some of the John Hughes stuff on its head a little bit.
Well, I thought it was interesting because you showed this to me, I think in 2019. You showed this to me like years ago, and you were so defensive about it, and I hadn't seen it, but I wanted to, and I was even telling you, like, this was critically acclaimed when it came out. Why are you so apologetic about showing it to me? Like, fun fact, I mentioned in our Evil Dead review last year how the remake was something I wanted to see, but I couldn't get to for one reason or another. This is in the same boat as the Evil Dead remake. I didn't see it when it came out because, and if it was 2016, it might have been like I was like graduating or something. I forgot what time of year it came out, but I was probably busy with life. But this was like, it was being hailed, oh my God, you need to see this movie. It did do pretty well at the box office, if I remember correctly. But I just thought that was so funny when you were like, oh, I want to show you this movie. Please don't judge me. I'm like, what do you mean judge you? This I remember when this came out. This was like everyone was saying it's a new classic.
Listen, when I tried to show this to a previous roommate of mine, it didn't. They were not a fan of it, and I was like so crushed because I like loved this movie. So this before I even knew that it was critically acclaimed or anything like this. Getting into it, okay, so we have The Edge of 17. This was directed by Kelly Furman Craig. This is also her debut as a director. She also directed this year's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which you'll hear more about in our end of the year.
Oh, thing. Good. I'm glad you watched that one. We'll see if I end up drinking with you on that one. It looked good. I missed it, but it looked good.
Yeah. The music is by Atli Overson, whose work you might recognize from, one of my favorite holiday films, The Holiday, the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, Law and Order: Criminal Intent, and the Chicago series on, I forget what network it's on, but it's like Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, Chicago Cop, or whatever it is, all the Chicago movies. Cinematography was by Doug Emmett. This was also written by Kelly Furman Craig. The budget of this was $9 million, and its box office was $19.4 million. Boom. It currently has a 94.9 on Rotten Tomatoes. Before I get into the cast, I'm going to read the accolades. I was starting to write them down, but there were just too many, so I'm just going to go ahead and list them off. So it was nominated for a ton of stuff. It was nominated for the Austin Film Critics Association for Best First Film, the Chicago Film Critics Association for Most Promising Filmmaker, the Critics' Choice Awards for Best Young Performer and Best Actress in a Comedy for Haley Steinfeld, Best Comedy for Kelly Furman Craig, the Detroit Film Critics Society. It was nominated for Best Film and Best Breakthrough, which it won for the director and screenwriter. The Directors Guild of America nominated it for Outstanding Direction for First Time Feature Film. The Golden Globe Awards nominated Haley Steinfeld for the Best Actress in a Motion Picture, Comedy, or Musical. The Golden Tomato Awards nominated it for Best Comedy Movie 2016. The MTV Movie and TV Awards nominated it for Movie of the Year and Best Actor in a Movie. New York Film Critics Circle nominated it for Best First Film, which it won for Kelly Furman Craig. The Teen Choice Awards also nominated it for Choice Movie Drama, Choice Movie Actress Drama. And the Toronto Film Critics Association nominated it for Best First Feature Film. The Washington, D.C. Area Film Critics Association for Best Youth Performance for Haley Steinfeld. And Women Film Critics Circle nominated Haley Steinfeld for Best Young Actress, and it won for that. So lots of critical praise for this. I am appalled
that MTV did not nominate it for Spiciest Kiss. Come on, guys. No, but
the Spiciest Kiss, for real.
The movie awards. That's like I don't know if you've ever watched the MTV Movie Awards. I think that was one of the wins that it had. But some of their categories are like so funny because it's like, oh, it's for teenagers. So, oh my God, hottest couple. Oh my God,
hottest
best breakout
couple. Spiciest kiss now.
Sexiest superhero movie.
As I often judge my superhero movies by how sexy they are.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we have a lot of accolades here. I didn't realize, and maybe I did and just forgot about it, but I didn't realize that this actually made it up into the Golden Globe circuit. I would have loved to have seen this for Haley and for Woody Harrelson I would have loved to have seen a Best Supporting Actor and a Best Actress nom, personally.
So she's a national treasure. I've been a fan of hers ever since she was in the Coen Brothers remake of True Grit.
True Grit.
She blew me away in that, and I was like, there's been a couple times when you see a child actor and you're just like, they are going to be a award factory in the future, and she was one of them. Like, I think she was like 12 years old or something in that, and she was nominated for Best Actress. Crazy.
Yeah,
and ever since, she's been great. Like, some people get really salty about all the replacements for the Avengers and the MCU. She's the new Hawkeye, and frankly, I'm cool with it.
Yeah. Like I was trying to think if this is her, and you just reminded me. I think she was nominated for an Academy Award for a performance in True Grit. And I think she was like the youngest actress nominated for that or something.
I think
maybe,
there's been a couple of little kids nominated. Like, obviously there's Haley Joel Osment. There was the girl from Little Miss Sunshine. There was the little girl from Paper Moon. Like, it happens every once in a while. A child actor or actress gets nominated. She's definitely not the youngest, but she, it was one of those years where a little kid was nominated for the best actor or best actress, and she was having a blast. She was blown away. I remember watching that Oscars, and she was kind of adorable because you could tell she just couldn't believe she was there.
She was the 9th youngest nominee.
There you go.
She's between Jodie Foster, A Taxi Driver, and Bonita Granville for these three in 1936. She looks like she beat Jodie Foster by a little less than 40 days, because they were both 14.
That just makes that Taxi Driver character more disturbing.
Right.
God.
Since we're talking about that, this movie stars Haley Steinfeld as Nadine, Woody Harrelson as Mr. Burner, Haley Lou Richardson as Krista. I just saw her in something the other day, and I can't think of what it is now. Blake Jenner as Darian, Kira Sedgwick as Mona, which is so funny because this is like the first. I know she's been in a ton of stuff, but this is the first time I've seen Kira Sedgwick in something since like The Closer. And then Hayden Szotto, I so apologize, that's not how you pronounce your last name, or Szotto, one of those, as Erwin. So we had, one of the things I really like about this movie is how well it was cast. Everybody in there was just perfect, being exactly who they were. Like Haley is amazing in this. She is top notch. Woody Harrelson is fantastic. And even the character of Erwin, there's just an effortless dorkability to the way he portrays him, which is just so funny to me, and I think he pulls it off flawlessly. And then of course we have Kira Sedgwick as the mother. She's great at being crazy. So
no, I agree. The casting's really good. Like, one thing I'm surprised, maybe you did mention it, but it was something watching it this time that I don't think I noticed when I saw it with you years ago. But James L. Brooks produced this, so it's the guy who created or produced The Simpsons, and that was like a thing I noticed. Is it still had the I can't remember the name of
the Gracie Films.
Gracie Films. Holy crap! Yeah, it had like the Gracie Films thing at the beginning.
So I was actually going to get into that, but I'll go ahead and jump into
we'll get into it. On the subject of acting, then, the one thing, it's not really a criticism, it's just something kind of funny that a lot of teen movies are guilty of. But I think it's kind of funny that this film has the cast like very conventionally attractive people as geeks. Because both Haley Steinfeld and Erwin, especially Erwin, like Erwin's like jacked up and he's supposed to be like... And that was another interesting thing, too. There was, like, a Korean company attached to this, and I remember watching this time and being like, that's weird. And then because I hadn't seen this in years, so I forgot about Erwin, and when he came in, I'm like, oh, okay, Korean actor, there we go. Like, that's where that connection is. But both him and Haley, it's so funny because they're supposed to be, like, the dorky kids, and they're both, like... very, very attractive people, like, especially Erwin when they're in the pool and he's just like super, super fit and like just very charismatic and stuff. It's just, again, it's not really a criticism, more is just like, oh, another one of those teen movies where, like, usually I guess the criticism is that they hire people who are like 30 years old to play teenagers. But when I was watching this, I was just thinking of like She's All That, where it's like, oh, just remove the glasses and suddenly she's beautiful.
I was speaking of the old age. Where did it go? Hold on. I have like 19 tabs open here because I just like literally could not write everything down. Speaking about the age gap, where is it at? Be helpful to me.
Oh goodness, was Irwin 30 years old?
Okay, it is with Irwin.
Oh God.
I'm trying to remember what okay, here we go. I think it's in this category right here. Okay, it's not in here. Oh yeah, here it is. Irwin is 11 years older than Haley Steinfeld.
Ugh.
But
whatever, man. And so never mind. It does fall into that category too of, oh, let's cast like if he was 11 years older, I think she was close to her actual age in that movie. So let's just say she was 17. So that means he was 28 years old. playing a teenager.
Well, so, to be fair though, he at least looked his age.
Yeah, I guess you could say so. The guy who plays her brother is kind of also like ripped in the body department. He can pass for it for sure.
Dude, there is some drama in that guy's life. I was looking it up. I guess he married somebody from Glee, and there's allegedly, strong emphasis on allegedly. I guess there were some issues with domestic assault in that relationship between the both of them. Oof. So that's pretty weird. Because I did not get that vibe.
You never do, especially that's the magic of a great actor, is even if they're a monster, they can come off as the best thing ever, because it's so funny. His character is such a nice dude in the movie. But again, that's the magic of acting, is they could just be total garbage people in their real lives, but they're good at acting.
And I think I also read. I think Irwin was. I think he was the last of the main characters to be brought on board. Haley Steinfeld and Woody Harrelson were secured pretty early on in the casting process. They also said that Woody Harrelson did a lot of ad-libbing in this.
He's good at it.
A lot of his snarky comebacks. Yeah, it's like many of his jokes and everything were improv by Woody Harrelson. See, this is like, I think to me is like the roles I like seeing Woody Harrelson in, because I usually don't. He's in a lot of dramatic roles. He's a great dramatic actor, but because my first experience with Woody Harrelson was on Cheers, ironically as the character Woody. I like seeing him in more comedy stuff, and so I really kind of like this here because like I said, this movie pretty much toes the line between comedy and drama.
He's very good in comedy. You avoid zombie movies because, well, maybe you don't as much anymore, but his character in Zombieland is really funny. The whole point, like it's the end of the world, but he just desperately trying to find Twinkies.
Oh my God!
Like that's his whole thing. Like he's just traveling America trying to find Twinkies. Every time he finds like a turned over Hostess truck, it's always like snowballs or cupcakes or whatever.
What's funny? Somebody brought that movie up the other day online, and they were trying to convince people that Bill Murray was a cameo in that movie, and people were like, no, he was a part in the movie. He wasn't just a cameo.
I'd say his part is small enough that I get what that person's trying to say, but yeah, it's like, I mean, he's playing himself. Like, he has some lines. But that's one, I agree. I think Woody Harrelson's really funny. And not only that, I remember reading an interview with Jennifer Lawrence back when The Hunger Games came out, and that was something she said about him, was that he was really funny on set. Like, he kept cracking her up. So, you know, this was like a really good casting for him, because the teacher was supposed to be really snarky, but like not in a way. He was good at making you understand he didn't actually hate her and wasn't like actually annoyed by her. He was just kind of messing with her, you know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of actors probably wouldn't make that, it wouldn't come across that way as easily or effortlessly with another actor. But Woody Harrelson was great at that.
Oh, yeah. Woody Harrelson was fantastic in this movie, and everybody, they talk about like what a powerhouse Haley Steinfeld is, but they said though in the scenes with Woody Harrelson, he does steal the show.
Everyone's really good. Like you just like rattled off the cast, and I agree. Like everyone was really well cast, and even the smaller parts. Like anytime someone needed to have like an emotional moment, whether it was the actor who played her brother or her best friend or her mom, like, or even a part like her dad, who's not even in the movie very much. Like this is, and this also goes to show, like, I'm actually surprised it only made 19 million. And I'm also surprised that it like 9 million, especially like a bunch of these actors are A-list and were A-list when this came out. So that's actually impressive that they kept the budget so low. But like, yeah, the cast is really good. And for the kind of movie this is, not only was the acting top notch, but everyone was so good at making you feel their feelings. Because, like, I told you before we recorded this, like, when I was watching the movie last week, or a few days ago, time flies, but I was like, I'm so excited to talk about this after Welcome to the Dollhouse, because this is almost like the mirror movie to that. Because the interesting thing, by the way, you guys should listen to our last episode, Welcome to the Dollhouse, but the interesting thing with that movie is that you've got this innocent girl who everyone is just so mean to her for no reason. Yeah. And then in this, it is a girl bullying herself. This is like self-sabotage the movie. It's a shame that Anti-Hero didn't come out until this year, because this would be great for the soundtrack of this movie.
Right? I actually didn't even think about that. Oh my god. See, somebody get online, make a music video for Anti-Hero using scenes from this movie.
I mean, you've got editing software, T. You can make that happen.
I could
watch it go viral. You got this. You can make it happen.
But yeah, but
no, do it and post it on our Twitter or something. I dare you.
Oh my god. Maybe not. Most likely not. But we'll see.
But I just thought that was so. It's funny because like I remembered that aspect of the movie, but rewatching it, I was just like, man. This is so. I think it's also because of like just having rewatched Welcome to the Dollhouse, but it's so perfect and opposite. Because again, and I use the term innocent to describe Dawn Wiener from the last movie. Not that Haley Steinfeld's character isn't innocent, but like again, she's creating all of the problems. The scene that really is like a gut punch to me, and I watched this with my sister, and she'd never seen this before, but like when she's mad at her best friend for hooking up with her brother, and she tells her like, you don't think he's just gonna dump you for the next hottest thing? It's like,
I know
he's devastating because
he's gonna dump you when somebody hotter comes along.
It's like you know that she's doing it out of pain, but my god, that is such a mean thing to say to somebody. It's like it makes it like, again, and that's kind of an amazing thing this movie does, is she on multiple occasions is the bad guy in the situation, but you never really like you don't like switch sides. She never loses you as far as like feeling like sympathy for her situation. I think last time I watched this with you, I did mention I felt she came off more irritating to me that time. Watching it this time, I just felt bad because it's like she's not trying to be a jerk, but she's being a jerk.
Exactly. It's like you talk about the self-sabotaging, and you talk about she gives that great speech at the end, which I've loved and I've related to on so many levels. Which talks about she sees herself like leaving her body, and she sees the things that she's acting and how she's behaving, and she hates it, and she just doesn't know how to like
and that's like the ironic thing is like, I was even talking about this with my sister when we watched it, but it's like, if a sibling is dating a friend of yours, it's awkward, but like you love your sibling normally. So, best case scenario, if your best friend is dating your sibling, it should be a win-win, because then your best friend is going to be your in-law.
Well, I mean, that's what her mom's trying to tell her in one.
Again, it's like,
but she's just not at that emotional place yet.
No, for sure.
like,
it's
to get
just
it.
like, well, and that's the other thing too, is like she makes her brother out to be like such a bad person, but like for the whole movie it's like he's nothing but nice. And he has a great little speech too about how it's like, you think it's all so easy for me, you know, but I have feelings too, and you think it's easy for me to like have to step in and basically parent my own mother. Ugh. And that too, man, this movie has some heavy themes. I remember when this came out, besides just talking about how critically acclaimed it was, all of the ads were kind of making it look like a lighthearted teen comedy.
Yeah.
My God, what like it's still a good movie, but I could see someone just being traumatized by going to this, because it's certainly funny, but yeah.
I will say though, is you do kind of know what you're in for at the beginning when her dad dies in front of her.
A bit. I think it gets heavier as it goes on, because
it gets heavier. But that at least if you can make it through that, you can make it through like the rest of the movie.
It's a bit. There is the scene in the car with the hot guy she wants to hook up with. I could see that being a lot for some people, especially Jesus nowadays. Like, Jesus came out in 2016. Boy.
Yeah.
Lots happened since then. But yeah, like, I don't think it would turn off anybody necessarily. I could just see someone like wanting to see something funny, like to make, your typical like super bad sort of movie or something, and then they put this on and start crying.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I told you how I feel like this movie, flips a lot of like the John Hughes kind of, tropes like on its head, in from his teen coming of age movies that he would do. And there's this quote from a Vox article by, did I write this down? Alyssa Wilkinson. I like to give credit where credit's due, because that's what you do for writers, and you pay them. She says, "The Edge of 17 is a story about how growing up actually means taking stock of how lousy a person you are, and also acknowledging that other people are doing their best to take care of you." And I feel like that's something that was not, from what I remember from the ones I've seen in the John Hughes movie, they kind of more leaned on the, you're just misunderstood. And in this one, and to me, that was kind of like a nice message, but I know something about it never felt like, truly, like, what is the word I'm trying to say? It didn't feel very, like, it felt very hollow. And
it felt like it was being written by someone who did, like, there are great moments in John Hughes movies. Like, there's in The Breakfast Club, the kind of bad boy in the, he talks about how, like, his father was, like, abusing him, like, beating him and stuff. And then the bit, like, I will defend Ferris Bueller's Day Off in the sense that, like, Cameron was the emotional core of that movie, and his bit at the end where he's just, like, talking about his dad and, like, how he's treated like he's not a person, like he's not allowed to touch anything in the house and all this other stuff, like that actually was very resonant. Like, again, Ferris Bueller is a dickhead, but he's not really the protagonist if you think about it. And he never learns anything. Like, the closest he comes to being a good friend is when the car gets wrecked at the end. He's like, "No, I'll tell your dad I did it. I stole your car, blah, blah, blah." But that's like the thing. John Hughes, I agree. I feel like he was trying to write about experiences he never had. You know what I mean? Like with the bad boy in The Breakfast Club talking about how his old man hits him. It's like that never happened to John Hughes, but he's like trying to kind of.
Right. No, he's trying. He's trying to create a connection.
Yes.
That he can't make because he never had that experience or whatever.
And I think that's why they might ring hollow for you, is because, like, even like that speech in The Breakfast Club, I think it's very good, but it also feels very like theatrical. Like, it feels very school play monologue kind of thing. And I think part of that comes from the fact that he never experienced it. Like, he's trying as hard as he can to make it, resonate with people, but it just comes off as very theatrical, for lack of a better word.
and like I said, and I think there's that, the forced theatricality, the forced connections, and that. But and I'm not trying to bash John Hughes. I'm just trying to say why this one stands out to me as opposed to those is, like I said, they all just seem to kind of, like I said, had this message that you're just misunderstood and adults or teachers don't know what they're talking about or anything. And this one, and like this person who wrote in Vox says, part of growing up is realizing you're a sucky person and people are trying to take care of you and you need to be aware of that. And
No,
I really like that they said that.
I agree. It's and that's what makes this so good, because I knew it was going to be good when you showed it to me years ago, but I remember being very surprised at how good it was, and that too. Like, I didn't really know where it was going, so I remember watching it with you the first time, being like, "My God, she's insufferable." She's, and then by the end of the movie, it's like, yeah, that's the point, is her realizing, like, oh, I created all of this drama. Nothing needed to be this intense. I didn't need to give my best friend an ultimatum to either be my friend or be dating my brother. Like,
yeah.
And that too. Like, there's so many. It also, like, kind of the cringe comes from the fact that you can tell that there's stuff going on with all of them. Like, something I forgot about until I rewatched it was the deal with her mother, and like, they never fully explain what is up with her, but I'm guessing it's bipolar. Like, there's like a line about like mommy takes medicine so that she doesn't go crazy and buy too much at the mall. Yeah. So like, that's really all you get, and it's, again, they never fully specify it, but it's like she's suffering from some kind of mental illness, and you really get it too when she just takes her daughter to work with her because she's fed up of like the whole, dropping her off at school. Because in a way, she's acting like the kid. Like, oh, fine, then I'm just gonna take you to work and all the,
Oh, I love that. And then you can explain to my boss, yeah, because your boss wants to be involved in your family drama. Okay, but yeah. But what's interesting to me about the family dynamic in this movie is Nadine had issues from the start. And I feel like the brother and the mother's issues really only popped up after the death of the father. And so,
especially the brother. So the father was holding the family together. Like, the thing that was hard on the brother was that his mom was not able to be like a completely responsible parent. So the brother's issues popped up because since their father was gone, he had to basically like keep his mom from losing it. Like, anytime she'd go off and do something wacky, like he had to parent his mother. Like, he said it better than I could in his little speech, but it's like he couldn't even look for colleges outside of their town because for all he knew, he'd have to, his mom would call him and he'd need to come and fix something. But yeah, no, like that's the kind of tragedy, is it's like, and I feel like that's part of the movie too, is Nadine, obviously her father was her favorite parents. They had a deeper connection and stuff, so she takes her father's death very personally, where it hit the whole family equally hard, and she just is so wrapped up in her own stuff that she's not really like seeing that.
Well, what's interesting is there's that whole interaction at the office with the mother and the daughter, and it's almost sort of like for a moment they have the same problem. They're all too wrapped up in how everything affects them,
yes,
and not anybody else. Because she even makes that point where she's like, you can find another, because she says, my husband knew what I had to deal with, which, if you really think about it, that's such an odd thing. You'd always hear a character saying, if you're a father. The fact that she brought it back to her, and that's when Nadine says, you can find another husband. He was my father. She's again also only making it about her, but the fact that both of them are just like, they can't even bridge the gap between the two. So I thought that was a very, very telling interaction, right there.
Agreed.
Really cool. I want to get back into some more of discussing the story, but I want to talk about this James L. Brooks connection. So yes. James L. Brooks produced this film. He was also notable as the producer of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Taxi, War of the Roses, The Simpsons, as you said, Terms of Endearment. I just kind of picked, the top things that popped into my head. But what's interesting is how this film got made, and it ties back to him. So, according to IMDb, Kelly Foreman Craig, the director, she wrote this and sent it off. She said she wrote it kind of, more on a spec level or whatever. And she sent it off. She's like, her dream would have been to work with James L. Brooks. She admired his work. And so the fact that he was the one that picked up and said, yes, I want to produce this, was like a dream come true for her. So that's super interesting, is like this was like her dream scenario and she got to make it happen. So he kind of helped her flush out, some more about what she wanted to say with that. So I thought that was super, super interesting that we had this legendary producer tied to this film that I feel like a lot of people haven't even heard of.
Definitely know everyone who's watched The Simpsons knows who James L. Brooks is. I was not aware of how many TV shows he was involved in, like Taxi or The Mary Tyler Moore Show. I know him from The Simpsons. I did not realize he had a hand in so many other projects.
Oh yeah. He's been around for a long time, and like I said, the fact that he was such a legendary producer that he took a chance on this project, I think that's kind of like a little special story. It's almost like he was the Mr. Burner to this script, is the way I look at it.
Mr. Burns.
Not Mr. Burns, Mr. Burner. I was talking about Woody Harrelson's character.
Well, if the early draft of the script was as powerful as this turned out to be, I mean, he'd have to be crazy not to say yes. This is such a good teen movie. Like, it genuinely, like, again, all those ads when it came out were calling it like a new classic. I think there were a lot of comparisons to John Hughes movies at the time. Again, it's been years. It's funny too, like when you showed this to me, I was amazed that it had come out years before, because it felt like it had just come out. And it's been even more years, I think, because it's also that too. I liked it even more watching it this time. I'm curious how many people this is like a very like big movie for them, because I imagine, in 2016, I'd be curious to see how many teenagers consider this like one of their favorite films from like those years, because as I said, it's interesting to me that this did not make more money, because I thought I figured it was a big hit.
Well,
like, at least it wasn't a bomb, but 19 million, it's like I'm surprised.
It opened opposite Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Oh God,
and Moonlight.
Bro, why would you do that? Why would you do that to yourself? Find a nice weekend where nothing is coming out. Weekend. Literally. You know what? That actually might be the problem, because 2016, famously, Deadpool came out in February and blew the box office open, and that was like kind of a thing that changed the industry within the last decade. Is now they will release big movies at weird times of the year, because they realize, wait a second, it doesn't need to be summer or winter for us to release something and for it to make money. We don't just have to dump our crap during the off months. So maybe if it were released now, they wouldn't have done something so dumb.
Unless you're Disney and you decide to release, the Haunted Mansion in July opposite Barbie and Oppenheimer, instead of waiting till, I don't know, October.
I feel like they didn't have a lot of faith in that project to begin with. Well, I haven't seen it. I'm sure
they say that, but they spent like over $100 million on it. Like they. Spent
that's like a wet farts amount of money to Disney. Like they'll spend $100 million on a failed theme park ride that they tear down in a year. So I don't know. I haven't seen it. I kind of am in agreement with you that it looked really good. You really liked it, but anyway,
I liked it.
It's
so they said that when this opened, it was projected to make $8 million its opening weekend, and it opened to 4.8. And this is one of those things that I think is hilarious, where they always do these box office projections, right? And then they like halfway through the weekend they changed the box office projection so that it's, I guess, so that it sounds better, but it's like, what is the point of a projection if you can just change it partway through?
Who knows? But that is sad, because I feel, especially kind of with the vibe that like Zoomers have nowadays, like, you know, very pro therapy and talking out your feelings and everything like that. I am curious how many did see this movie, because I think,
Yeah.
genuinely, this is great.
I see. You what's interesting is you're talking about like how generations will relate to it. Do you know what scene I related to the most? Like, not the dialogue I told you about earlier.
Oh, totally, the
scene-
pet store.
Oh no! God, no! My God, who do you think I am? I'm a lady. The scene where after she and Nadine have their fight, and she walks into the cafeteria to eat, and then decides she has nowhere to sit, and she goes and hangs out with her teacher. I did that, I think, through 4 years of high school because I had no one to sit with.
Was your teacher snarky? Did they say funny
No,
things
she wasn't
to you?
snarky. No, but she was actually in the middle of teaching English, so it wasn't like an empty classroom. But
That's more awkward. That's actually kind of funnier than the movie.
but no, but yeah, so yeah, this movie is you know, it's fantastic. It was filmed in L.A. and Vancouver.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm like, there's no way those exteriors are in LA.
Yeah, no, I think they filmed the exteriors in Vancouver.
They had to.
Think,
I was gonna guess like Michigan or like Minnesota or something because it looked very like north and cold.
but you talked about I wonder if the original script is as strong as this. Well, according to a helpful person on IMDb, they have talked about what some of the differences are. So I'm going to go ahead and read those to you and get your reaction to some of them.
Yes.
So first off, the original script was titled Besties.
But no.
No.
I mean, it
already
makes,
know.
I will say, Edge of 17 is like very vague, but it sounds good. Besties, also Besties would, it has the same problem as the marketing where I would think I'm going to see a much lighter hearted movie.
Well, it did say that it centered more on the comedic aspect and Nadine's friendship with Krista, rather than the friendship being one of the aspects affecting her life. So that was one of the big changes, is it focused more on their relationship with each other. Whereas this movie, and I think this is something that that James L. Brooks, because like I told you, he said to her, he said, quote, "The most important thing you have to figure out is what you want to say about life in this story," end quote. And I think that's why she changed the focus from this friendship to Nadine and everything she's going through and trying to understand her.
I think it's also, I think that was a wise decision from James L. Brooks. Like, here's an example from a few years ago as well. So, like, one thing I will say about, like, good teen movies, and this includes John Hughes, is you do need to have an emotional component to it, because teenagers are very emotional beings, probably more so than any point in anyone's life. So especially if you want to reach that demographic, I really think you need to have something like deep to say,
Right.
even if you're packaging it in kind of like a goofy high school kind of story. Great example of the opposite, and I will say it is a good movie, but one of your favorite hack lady directors, what was it? Not Easy A, it was Booksmart.
Yes, Olivia
So,
Wilde.
thank you. Yeah, your favorite your favorite lady director. Just kidding.
That girl's life is a mess, but go on.
Man, ooh. Anyway, but so that was a good movie. Booksmart was a good movie. Does not have anything deep to say. It is 99% a comedy. Like, the deepest thing it has to say is said in the first 10 minutes, and it's essentially kind of the gist of like what sets off their little adventure. It's like, you know, these two girls who spent all of their life studying and doing nothing else, and then they find out all of the kids are going to like the same Ivy League universities, and, you know, because that, oh, you guys are just gonna like end up working at 7-Eleven, you're gonna go nowhere. And they're like, what are you talking about? We're going to the same college. Like, you can have a social life and like study at the same time, and that's like the smartest thing that movie says, because I do think that there are people like that in school where they made being smart their entire personality, and they didn't, so that was deep, but it wasn't very emotionally resonant. And that movie is fun. As I said, I think that is a good movie, regardless of what either of us thinks of Olivia Wilde. However, I don't think it has a lot of like staying power in your brain. You remember it for being funny. You remember it for scenes that made you laugh, but you do not remember it on like a deeper level. You don't feel like, you don't think about Booksmart and be like, oh yeah, that movie hit me, man. That hits different. It doesn't. No,
I totally get you. Yeah.
With this, like, as I said, it's been years since I saw it, but I remembered how tough a watch this is in a good way. And I remembered, like, the message of like how Nadine was like her own worst enemy and all that stuff. And so I think that was a smart move on James L. Brooks' part, because I can see the version of the movie in my head now that she probably wrote, where it's probably like in my head canon, my imagination, I'm thinking that the whole movie would have been like a little rivalry between her friend and her. Maybe even she's like competing with her brother for her friend's attention, and it's just like a series of funny gags in the school. Right. And that would have been a funny movie.
I just remembered this, and I remember when I told you kind of what was about, and you're like, oh god, is it like the kissing booth? I think I remember you specifically saying when I was trying to describe what it was about.
I don't know if you liked the kissing booth, but that movie
I never saw it.
It's so bad. It's so bad. You should see it. And I love, again, everyone craps on like teenagers. I'm glad on multiple occasions, now that I'm like in my 30s, I'm very happy that on multiple occasions teenagers make me proud, because everyone crapped on the kissing booth. Like, young kids crapped on the kissing booth, and I'm so happy. Because this is like the opposite of that movie. This is like actually saying something. You should see the kissing booth. You'd see what I mean. It's I'm sure there's people that like it, but it's just like vapid garbage. Like I can't. I'm never very negative on this show, but there you go, guys. That's a movie I can. That's a movie can get mad about.
Cannot stand. So in addition to the focus being on Nadine's friendship with Krista, the script did not have the character of Mr. Burner. So Woody Harrelson's character wasn't there at all, which I think is a huge loss. Because that's like he's like such a fabulous part of the movie. Nadine's
you know what one of my favorite scenes is? So it's like a setup and a payoff. So there's the bit where he kind of is like, I'm trying to enjoy my lunch, blah blah blah, and she no. What he says is, maybe Nadine, nobody likes you.
Nobody likes you. Yes.
And she again is a jerk. She goes off and crosses the line on so many levels. Like, she insults his appearance. She says he'll never find love. Everyone in the school hates him. And he's just calm about it. He's like, I'm going to give you half of my cookie because you're having a bad day. My favorite part is when he picks her sorry ass up from her bad date, takes her to his house, and not only is he happily married with a lovely woman, he has a kid who he's great with. Yeah. Like, everything she said out of anger is so off the mark, and that's a big reason why he didn't lose his shit and like get angry with her. But it just really goes to show, it's like she was doing. And she was doing this with her brother. She had this kind of this thing of like prejudging people. Like, she would always assume like, oh, my brother's handsome and charismatic, therefore he's an asshole. And it's the same thing, like, oh, this teacher's grouchy, so he must live alone. He probably lives in a studio apartment in a crappy like complex on the other side of town. And it's like, she has such a negative view of things that she just projects that onto other people.
Oh yeah, and that's sort of, and we figure out quite quickly what her issue is when they have that sequence at her house where she has too much to drink and
Oh
everything.
yeah, no,
And
they're
she
great.
throws up, and she says that she said, what does she say? She says, the worst thing is that I have to live every day of my life with myself, or something like that. Basically, she doesn't like herself, and it's all projection.
Yeah.
Which that's just such like a powerful, like, eye-opening scene. Also, the fact that happened. But yeah, his whole thing, and like I said, I love that setup and that payoff, because I love how she's like, and everybody knows bald men are gross. and then I also like in that scene when she comes back and says, you're not totally bald, you have some hair growing. And I love how he goes, yeah, I'm glad you came back and clean that up. There's so many great lines with him. But they also said that one of the changes is Nadine's full name was Nadine Hamidi Yousefa Rostami. So I don't know if she had a different ethnicity or something, but that was her full name in it. Her mom's boyfriend was envisioned differently. He had dialogue in it, so I guess he was an actual character. And there was no mention of her father's death. And the character of Nick, who is the creepy, guy that she has a crush on, his name was Hot Soccer Dan. And he only had around 2 lines of dialogue. And then Irwin was a flautist instead of an aspiring filmmaker, and the film ended with a prom sequence.
So James L. Brooks is an excellent mentor. Every change he's made is better. I like the filmmaking thing is great for a movie. It's better for that medium to show, like, especially as an aspiring artist and having like a goofy little cartoon. It also, I love how in his goofy little cartoon he's kind of expressing his feelings. That was the whole thing. Like, oh, it's about me, and then it's not about you. Just kidding. Yeah, like also like the soccer thing. I like. Again, a lot of his notes were just kind of setting it apart. Like the pet store thing was something I like because it was very visually striking, and it was a unique thing for the hot guy to be into. Like if it was like soccer or football or something, whoopee,
We've seen that before.
It's a million other teen movies. And same thing too, like everything I just went off about, like with the emotional resonance of this film applies to the dad dying. Like again, to give a crap, the reason you stay with Nadine and you feel for her as the protagonist is because of that setup. Like we hear how she felt about herself as early as like 2nd grade. We see her get bullied once for the whole movie. And then her friend, meets her and they bond, and you see how like when her and her mom aren't getting along, her dad is there to be there for her. And going through her pain for like the first 15 minutes of the movie really makes her dad dying a bigger gut punch. And it also really, you understand her. Even when she is making an ass out of herself, you really get it. And it because again, if you didn't have any of that backstory, she would just come off like a jerk. You wouldn't care about her, like if we had none of that backstory about how her friend left or anything, and about her dad dying. If it just started and it's like her mom has like a boyfriend, and oh no, my best friend is dating my brother, like if she said some of the things she said to her teacher or her best friend, you wouldn't be on her side because you wouldn't have any of that context to put it in.
Well, especially with the fact that she's also, you talked about that gut punch with the what is it called? When she talks to Krista and she says he's gonna dump you or whatever. There's that, and then sometimes she's just downright cruel, like when she's with her brother. You would talk about a sucker punch when she's laying out, I saw you crying in the pillow and everything, and like you think they're gonna have like an emotional moment, and she's like, I wish you cared about me as much. It's like, it's like moments like that when she's just kind of just inherently cruel. It's like, if like you said, if you didn't see everything that she'd been through, you would not at all want to see her character have any sort of comeback story or anything.
Well, I've mentioned this in past episodes when talking about things like writing for villains, but like how you get the audience to connect with a character is context, it's backstory. You have to understand
Right.
the character's motivation as well as the actor does, you know, and that's why, like, if you didn't have that, she would be the anti-hero.
Yes.
Because you'd be like, wow, what a horrible thing to say to your friend. I automatically don't care about anything that happens to you. But,
Yeah.
you know, having, again, it's the same thing, like, I've told this story on the show before, but I'll say it again. Like, we were talking about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and, you know, in the class they asked, why is Nurse Ratched a villain? Like, she's doing her job. She, you know, and the big reason is because you don't know why she is so mean. There's no explanation for why she is so needlessly cruel to the patients. There could be a reason, but none is given. We don't know anything about her home life. We don't know anything about her personality other than she is mean. And so you side with the patients, even though they do some things that are completely out of control and out of the context of the movie. It would be horrifying, you know? But you side with them because of how she's been to them throughout the whole movie. It's the same thing with this. Like, that whole backstory is so key to this story that was being told. And again, a part of that was also like how she changed the type of movie it was. But that is, again, James L. Brooks is apparently just a really good mentor, because every change that was made to the script sounds perfect. It's literally what made this movie so good.
Right, and it's, you know, and it's become just such a phenomenal, just fantastic piece. Like you said, I really do believe this is a classic. Like, I don't know if I ever told you this. I first saw this as the last date I had when I was in Boston. He wanted to see this movie, so that's how I saw it. But this movie was just is just an instant classic. It has, you know, everything about it is really good, and, you know, it doesn't get, but for me, it also never becomes any lighter. You know, no matter how many times like you watch it, there's some things. It's kind of like when you've seen it enough, it's like it doesn't, you know, just as I've seen this quite a few times, and it's still just as heavy as it is, but it's not needlessly heavy. And the fact that the film lightens up at the end, and there is, and, you know, everything's not solved, everything's not great, but you see the potential for improvement in Nadine. She's
learned what's wrong. Like, she's learned her mistakes. She is okay with her best friend, and that too, she's decided to, like, she's finally again realized there's no reason to hate her brother as much as she does. There's a bit of a kind of nice guy tint to the whole Irwin thing that I wasn't a fan of as much, but like there is kind of an irony to how she judges all the like popular kids for being like very vapid and self-centered and judgmental, and here she was like going after the cute guy who works at the pet store when she is genuinely having a connection with this other guy. And just not do, and that too, every time Irwin has an opportunity to be creepy or like sexually aggressive, like that is like the polar opposite scene when they're in the pool and she's like, oh, what if we had sex right now? And just kidding. And he seems like he's mad at first, and then he turns it into a joke.
Yeah.
And then when like something similar happens with the cute boy from the pet store, completely opposite, you know.
Completely opposite reaction.
Also, I think she kind of learns, like, you know, not to say that the guy wasn't being a jerk, but there is something to be said about the fact she, like, sends this very, like, sexually charged message to the guy. Like, again, he was a jerk about it, but it's like, it would seem from her message that she wanted to hook up, not have a boyfriend, and this guy doesn't know her at all. So you really do see what a jerk he is, but it's also kind of like, Nadine, that's not how you do that.
That's not how you do,
like, if you want romance, you gotta put that energy out. You know,
you gotta romance it up.
You know, if you just send
Woody Harrelson gave one of the best dramatic readings of an awkward text ever.
Oh God, yes, that scene. Oh my God, yeah. Genuinely, like we already raved about the acting. Everything was so. This is grade A cringe comedy. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's like I think I mentioned eighth grade earlier when we were talking about A24. That's like another excellent example of just like relatable teenage cringe, because we've all been there. We've all done some stuff that makes you physically hurt.
The thing about eighth grade that I related to the most, I mean, I related to a lot of it, but the thing I related to most was just the super blasé active shooter drill they have. And yeah, there's that guy that's just walking in the hall, bang, you're dead, bang. It's just like, you know what I mean? It's just so commonplace that it's like not even like.
It's so weird. That was surreal to me, because those drills existed when I was in high school, but they were so much more like primitive. It was basically just like get in a classroom and lock the door. You know what I mean? Like hearing about how that has changed over the years is really like mind blowing to me, because it's so much worse. When I was in high school, it was a thing, but it like Jesus, it happens like once a month nowadays.
Listen, they just had a active shooter training thing for the local police department at my old high school, and I was so mad because I had the opportunity to be a dead body, and I totally missed it because I had like somebody's birthday to go to.
Well, your priorities are screwed up, and you should think about that.
I know. But so just go back. Before we close out, talking about this fabulous movie, I do want to say that one of my favorite things about this is just how quotable it is.
Oh yeah, which is what I said about Welcome to the Dollhouse. You definitely need to quote that movie with people you know. You don't want to quote that out but like I said about the 3 p.m. line in the last review, there's I agree. This is equally quotable. Again,
Listen,
perfect pairing of movies. I would recommend a double feature of these back to back. Honestly, like we'll get into our ratings in a second, but if anyone listening has not seen either of the films that we've talked about this month, watch them together. It is. I genuinely think this would make like an amazing double feature.
First off, yes, I agree, but I also like telling people that when something catastrophic happens, I'm like, how are things? And then I just like to say below average. Yeah. There's that. There is you need to watch out for run-on sentences. That's a great line, especially after everything that he reads. And that's what you should be concerned about. I love the whole, when she's talking with with Chris, she's like, what if I liked your dad? And then she does that whole like thing. Oh, Lewis, I love your bell phone. It's so hot. Oh, Krista, you're home early. That's like such like a great thing there. There's that. There's oh my god,
the belt phone was great. That was a good one.
There's a lot in here that I just love to quote and bring out a lot, and I don't know. Very quotable movie to me. I actually think this is more quotable than Mean Girls. Come at me, but I think so.
That is a bold statement. I don't necessarily disagree, but I'm curious.
but he's not signing on to that statement.
I'm thinking about it deeply.
He's thinking about it deeply, and
I'm thinking about it deeply because I'm thinking of like all the quotable lines. You're never gonna make X happen. Like it was fetch in the movie, but the whole fetch thing that's definitely quotable. Like just replace fetch with whatever someone is trying to make popular, and that's always kind of a good line. Mm-hmm. It's not really quotable, but you know what my favorite line from Mean Girls was made out with a hot dog. I only did that once.
That would be a very, very niche situation.
It's not really quotable. Yes. Like it's just my favorite line in the movie. I remember. Oh God, just.
And with that being said, what is your rating, Whiskey?
Well, I'm gonna prolong my rating by kind of going back and like one thing I said about the film last time. Welcome to the Dollhouse. I didn't give it a great rating, despite it being like one of my favorite like movies about bullying. And one thing, like, I always talk about how much of a cinematography simp I am, but, like, I kind of want to clarify, like, because with that movie, it was very low budget, and there's only so much you can do with, like,
Right.
cinematography, and, like, and that was, like, one of my things. Not so much just cinematography. I think one of the reasons that film was held back was, like, just being kind of basic. I think it's really good, and I think a lot of what makes it good is in the writing, and also with the lead actress in that role. But, you know, any opportunity there was to make it look interesting, there just wasn't any of that. Even to the soundtrack in Welcome to the Dollhouse, there's like 3 songs in the whole movie. Like, every time she had like kind of an angry, like, rebellious sort of thing happen, it was always the same, like, you know, angry punk guitar chords that weren't even a song. This movie, also on a shoestring budget, you know, 9 million as opposed to less than $1 million from last, but this is like a great example of it didn't need to be flashy, but just coming up with good ways to make it visually interesting. Like, for instance, the pet store, you know, and that atmospheric kind of ambient lighting of the fish, creating like a dark, like, blue thing, stuff like that. Or like her first date with Irwin where they go to the carnival. There's also like, you know, there's lots of that. There's good music in this. I feel like this is as good as the writing was from the last film. Like, this just steps it up from in every aspect. All of the acting is good. The writing is amazing. Visually, it's amazing, even though it's not like super flashy cinematography. It's got a memorable soundtrack. So this time, I know you're going to be surprised, but last episode, I believe I gave it a 2.5. This gets the 3.5, almost perfect. Really good, instant classic. I think this is like this should be a new teen movie that like kids should watch. And if you're listening and you somehow missed this, watch it. It's really damn good. All of those annoying, critical acclaimed things in the commercials were right. Just know it's a little heavier than your average comedy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would take kind of, it's a stretch to even really classify this as a comedy. I would really say
it's a dramedy.
Even a dramedy, maybe a dramedy. I would, definitely a dramedy. Because I think billing it as a comedy, I think you expect a certain level of lightness or at least levity to it that's not there. So I would classify this as a dramedy. I'm going to go ahead and also give it 3.5 out of 4 pitchers of sweet tea.
Oh my gosh, we're twinsies!
We're twinsies! We're besties.
Besties. The bad title. The title that, thankfully, this was saved for being.
Was changed. Are you saying we're not going to have a prom sequence later? No, I'm just kidding.
Ew.
So basically for what you said, and just one of the things about this is, like I said, this is a very special film to me, so it was already going to get like a boost anyway, just because, like I said, this is the first really coming of age movie that I could relate to, because the characters were more than just misunderstood. Was Nadine misunderstood? Yes, she was. But we also acknowledge and realize she can't be sucky all the time. And I do like the end of the movie really hints more at a progress and not necessarily perfection ending, because I think the fact, and I think it's a small thing, but I think it really stands out, the fact that they're like, oh, hey, you know, have a great day. And she kind of just nods. She goes outside and she goes to leave. And then she comes back and says, you too, both of you, have a good day as well. The fact that she left and came back, to me, you know, it's kind of like she's acknowledging, I'm going to make mistakes, but at least I'm going to try to fix them. You know, I'm not going to, like, you know, roll around in my angst about it, you know, forever. And I'm the only one who's miserable. So, and also because that ending, like the fact that it's very special to me, everything we talked about as far as stellar casting, stellar writing, stellar producing, great soundtrack, which, by the way, if I've never sent you the music video for Mike Snow's Genghis Khan, which is featured in this movie, I need to. Because
I think really I've seen it, but feel free to. I sent you a song before we started recording, so
yes,
feel free to send me.
We will listen to each other's songs.
Exactly.
But for all those reasons, I'm giving this a 3.5, and I really encourage everybody to kind of watch it. And I would even say, depending on, you know, the teenagers or whatever that are in your life, whatever you feel is appropriate for them. I think it's a movie that definitely teenagers will benefit from seeing as well, as long as that's appropriate in your household.
I'm also going to take this time. I like doing this every few episodes, just in case you are a new listener. If that seems low, we do a thing. We're spoofing Siskel and Ebert, so our ratings are out of 4. So in case you're like 3.5, 3.5, so it's 3.5 out of 4. Yeah. And if you're like, that's dumb, yeah, we agree. That's why we think it's funny to spoof them, because no one uses 4 stars as like a full rating. So yeah, in case you were wondering. But what do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments if you're listening to this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on other podcast platforms. Feel free to check out our backlog of episodes. We got a whole bunch of great things to listen to. And I always say like, comment, and subscribe, but I'm going to try something new this episode. If you like our show, if you've listened to more than one episode and you are just finding us insatiable, you can't stop listening to us, spread us around, man. Tell your friends, share it to somebody. Spread the love. Let people know that we're worth listening to, if you think so.
Let the love blossom.
But otherwise, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. We got Halloween coming up next time. It's going to be super spooktacular. But
if you don't know, this is when Whiskey assumes his ultimate form.
Oh yes, my ultimate form. I fully werewolf transform into a Costco dad. No, but But thanks again for hanging out with us, guys. Looking forward to Spooktober, or whatever it is we decided to call it last year. But until then, this has been Whiskey.
And this has been Sweet Tea.
Keeping it Kino.
And suck it, Scorsese.
Peace out, guys.
Reels on the Rocks is a production of La Prince Laboratories. It is edited and produced by Alejandro Castillo and features original artwork by Asa Esparza and original music by Pat Mars. Follow us on Twitter at Reels on the Rocks and tweet at us with any movies or topics you'd like us to discuss in the future.